Here's a little project that happened this week, Thursday and Friday. Going to be a big surprise for Mom when she comes home. So here's a view of the property along the road. So the road runs east and west. We're right above the shop now. Now we've dropped down with the drone and we're going to just run along the frontage and take a look at the yard that borders on the road. So we're going to make a pass this way over the bean field, turn around, come back just to take a look at what the frontage for the property looks like along the road. This little project is something that Mom was interested in getting started. She's been working with a company called the Tree Patch out of Hamilton, and working with Ron over there. We didn't think this was gonna actually happen until September, but the weather got kind of nice, and Ron gave us a call and wanted to know if we could move up the schedule, so we did. Mom's in Pennsylvania now, and she's gonna in for a big surprise when she gets home. So here we see the truck and the workers showing up. Brian is one of Ron's sons. Ron is in the white, Brian's in the blue. I'm in the dark blue, and Ron and I are kind of talking about just some of the details of where the trees are going to get installed. You see the truck with 4 of the white pines that are going to get installed. And they're just, we're trying to figure out, where's a good place to stage the trees, and where can the truck get in and out of. Ron and I are going to take a walk along the frontage there. We're looking at things like where the power line is coming in. Those were marked by Dig Right earlier in the week. We're looking at where the power comes in, the water comes in, the internet comes in, and the placement of some of the trees that are already existing. Previous owners planted some pin oak that we think probably came from the property, that run along the frontage but set back a ways. And you can see them from the overhead view, and you'll also be able to see them here shortly, where I kind of turn the drone and look a little more along the frontage of the road. So Brad, another one of Ron's boys, is in the semi. So here Ron and I are kind of walking along the frontage and figuring out what sort of spacing we want. We'd talked about this with him a little bit when we went out to visit his tree farm, the Tree Patch. But we're just kind of, now that he's here, we're taking a look at the specifics, right? How far is it between the driveway and the bean field, and how much setback do we have from those pin oaks? You see those pin oaks now, they're the line of trees just to the south of the frontage. And the new trees are going to go in between the road and where the existing trees are. It's hard to see from here, but there's kind of a berm along the frontage as well. It's not huge, but it's a decent sized bump, not what you'd call a ditch or anything like that. And we're just trying to make sure that there aren't any utilities, or the water line doesn't run there. Here is the clamshell, and it's going to dig a hole for the placement of the first tree. So you see that the machinery kind of sprays water down, as well as the fingers of the clamshell are now digging kind of a conical shaped plug where the new tree will go. And Brian's working the controls there, and he's just kind of alternating those fingers, spraying water in there, and then just kind of slowly digging down to the depth of the plug that they're going to pull out here shortly. And I'm told by Brian and Ron that, depending on the amount of clay you have in your soil, these plugs will run from 3,000 to 3,500 pounds. They have a larger clamshell, and they can place even larger trees than the ones we're going to see here. I don't remember that number. I think it was around 5,500 or 5,000, 5,500, something like that for the larger plugs. But now you see that the fingers have all gone to their maximum depth, and now the hydraulics are just going to pick that plug right up out of the hole. I'm going to step forward here once it clears, and we can take a look down. Pretty interesting hole that gets dug. And you'll see a little bit of that water that was used when they were placing, when the fingers were digging in. Here now Brad has moved back over to the trailer, and he's taking that plug that he just dug, and he's putting it in a slot where there was a tree. Now sequencing is a little weird here. We've already placed the tree. What happened first was they dug the first plug, then they just set it aside. Then they took a tree, placed it in that hole, and then dug another plug, and now they can just alternate digging a plug and putting it back on their trailer bricks. Because remember, they pulled these trees from the tree farm, and they've got a bunch of holes. And if they were to do that kind of consistently, their whole property would be holes. So they're going to take the plugs that they dig from our place and put them on the trailer in place of the trees that they brought. And then when they go back to the tree farm, the tree patch, they'll go and they'll take these plugs and plug where these trees were harvested. Now Brad has placed that plug in an empty slot, and now he's going to pick another one of those white pines for a hole that he's already dug. So Brad is in the truck, he's kind of positioning things. Brian is working the hydraulics, and you'll see those fingers will go down and pick that harvested tree out of the carrier. It's all very efficient. I tell you, these guys that were just a joy to work with, Brad and Brian and Ron, professional, timely, kept us in the loop and worked with us in terms of what sort of trees we wanted and various options of where they got placed, various sizes of trees, various varieties of trees. And we finally decided on 10 total trees. We're gonna place 8 white pines that are all about the size that we're seeing here, and then 2 maples. So here we're placing that first tree, and this is a shot from the drone. So I apologize that the format kind of switches back and forth. I used my phone for some of it and the drone for some of it, so you'll see the format kind of switches back and forth. I don't have a good GoPro or handheld camera, so I'm just using my phone here. But you see that just before they placed that, just before the clamshell came down, the truck wasn't exactly aligned, but as the clamshell goes into the hole, it self-centers. Brad will leave kind of the brakes off and the truck out of gear, and then as that plug goes into the hole, Brian can position the truck by basically using the hole as a registering pin, or what, if you will. So you'll see Brian looking back over his shoulder. Ron is standing kind of out of the shot to the south here, and letting him know that the tree looks plumb. they tell us that the pines pretty well self-correct if you get them a little bit off. Some of the hardwoods, not so much. So they want to be real careful in the placement. Plus that, hopefully when they dug that plug, they dug that plumb, so the hole is sort of level across the top and goes straight down. That way when they place the tree, it can be plumb and the hole all lines up and they get a nice fit. This particular one was a really nice fit. And we'll see a little bit more of a close-up of this placement here in a little bit. But I wanted to show kind of both an aerial view of this and a ground level view of placing the trees so you can get an idea of how this goes. It's very interesting. So now Brian and Brad are kind of working together. After the clamshell, it kind of opens up in the back there. And you want to be careful when you pull out because there's not a huge gap. If you misalign that at all, you might just pull the tree over as you pull out. Now this is another tree. I think this is the fourth one the fourth pine that we're placing. And you'll see again here that alignment isn't great. I mean, you wouldn't want the tree to be planted like this, but once the clamshell goes into the hole, then Brad will just use it to kind of pull the truck into the right position. And then once it gets pretty close, then he'll drop the support, those outriggers to kind of set its spot. And then you can do the fine adjustments to get the tree straight up and down. This one is nice because there's a telephone pole right there that you can kind of use to gauge, assuming that, or it's not a telephone pole, sorry, it's a power pole. Assuming that the power pole is straight up and down. I didn't put a level on it, but it's pretty close. So now Brian's just kind of using the micrometer to make sure that it's plumb. I'm not in the shot either. I'm kind of around the backside and verifying. And Brad is looking from the cab as well, so Brad can look out the back window and kind of line things up as well, so that it's plumb in that direction. Now they'll just retract those fingers, the clamshell fingers, and I don't know that that's the right terminology for these, but I think you can understand what I'm talking about. They're going to retract those. That clamshell will lift up. They'll split it in the back, and then he'll pull away and leave the tree where it is. Now this one wasn't quite as perfect in terms of the fitting, and you can imagine there's going to be variation. Where they picked the tree out of, if that ground wasn't kind of at the same level. In terms of, the direction that the tree was growing out of it compared to where you're putting it, and, how plumb you got the hole, and there's a lot of variables in there. But, once these were placed, they were all very, very straight up and down, with only minor variations with the kind of the fit around the ground of those plugs when they, went in the holes. And you'll see it here a little bit later that these guys will, they brought in, I didn't count them, but I'd guess, on the order of a pallet worth of topsoil, and kind of filled in and mounded around these trees. And here, that's what Brian's doing here. He'll put, I don't know, 8, 10, 15 bags of soil, topsoil, around kind of the seam where the tree went in, and then he'll come along with a spade or a pick and kind of make sure that the topsoil filters down. There's going to be some settling over time, and I'll fill it in over time as it does that settling. But so here you saw had a ranch security there walking by. He's making sure, coordinating things and making sure things are going to plan. And I just wanted to give, kind of a second view of how this works. I think this is very interesting, the way these holes get dug. You can see and kind of hear the water that's spraying down along those fingers as Brian is kind of alternating, digging, pulling back, digging, pulling back. Now he's got it to the maximum depth, so he's going to pick that plug up out of the hole, and Duke's going to give it a look to see if it meets with his approval. So we had, as I said before, we had 8 pines and 2 aspens, maples. And I think Ron told us their Autumn Blaze is kind of the variety of maple. These maples are really tall. I guess if they told me, I don't remember how tall they are. I'm guessing it's at least 20 feet. 15, 20 feet, 18, 20 feet, something like that. Maybe even taller, I'm not sure. But you see here, instead of bringing these, 2 at a time, they brought these 1 at a time. Because you saw how it was laying over the top of the cab of the truck. So here's what it looks like once it got done. Now here is Saturday, and I took the drone back up to give you a view of how it looks, kind of the after shot. We're going to run along the front of the property again, and you can see all the trees are in now, the 8 pines and the two maples. And it sure gives a different look to the front of the property. We're hoping it's going to help cut down on the dust from the road, maybe a little bit of the noise from the road. And there you can see all the trees, all the new trees. So on the east side of the drive here, we've got a maple. The 2 maples are on either side of the driveway, and then the pines go east and west from there. And now you can see the pin oaks that were already there on the left, and then the new trees are all over there on the right. And we'll just make a slow pass over to see how nice this looks now that they're all in. As I said, we're really happy with the folks from the tree patch. They were just a real pleasure to work with. And I think it looks fantastic. I'm excited to hear what Robin thinks about it when she gets back tomorrow. She'll get in late tomorrow, so I probably won't. And when I say late, I mean, 2 a.m. She's coming from Pennsylvania. It's about a 16-hour drive. I'm going to take the drone up to about 250 feet and give a view, kind of another top-down view, to compare that with what we saw before we started the project. This is looking off to the east of our place, some of the neighbors' places, and so now you get to see kind of how it looks from 200 or 250 feet. I think it turned out really nice. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this.